Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are in KCAA radio all over Southern California. If you miss us live on the radio, you can go to kcaaradio.com, catch us in the archive, or better yet, catch us on streaming. We videotape all of our shows. You can find them on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, on the Android channel. Just look for the Building Solid Foundations channel, and you will find our show along with a lot of other great shows that are educational, encouraging, empowering, all positive information. The Building Solid Foundations channel. Today we are in the studio with Dr. Rob Garcia. He is a specialist in helping people become business celebrities. He says all of us have a warrior strategist inside of us, a champion undeterred by circumstance, situation in life, or obstacles. He grew up in a low-income family and failed out of high school and college, and he set himself on a path to inspire and lead from the front. He loves helping people to realize their purpose and to achieve far past what they thought possible. After 8 books, 135 plus interviews, starting a magazine, and winning a business award, you realize that anything is possible when you work with determination. Rob is the warrior strategist, and he's going to talk to us today about how he helps people become business celebrities. Welcome, Rob, to Building Solid Foundations.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. Really excited to be here.
So you're someone that's been on my list a long time to have on the show. We have mutual connection, my producer, Marie, who we've been trying to get you on. Finally, the schedules align, and I'm excited about it because she's told me little snippets about what you do, but it's still a little bit of a mystery to me. So I like discovering a lot about the guest as my audience discovers it as well. And I tell people all the time, they say, where do you find guests? Why do you decide what to talk about? And I say, anything that interests me is what I do. Whatever I think is fascinating is what I'll put on. So I like to learn things. So Rob, tell us a little bit about your background. I read a real small snippet, a little teaser, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, thank you. So I grew up in Humboldt County, which is Northern California, and I had a very bad learning disability as I was going through school. And back then, this is the early 90s, we didn't have like medications or IEPs or, an aid assigned to us to help us if our ADD is just spiraling out of control. So my grades always suffered. I had a very high reading comprehension, but I just couldn't focus in a classroom, and math was particularly challenging for me. And so I had a family situation going on too. And so 90% of my family is either severe drug addicts, alcoholics, or in jail. So it made childhood very difficult. A lot of depression, a lot of just very challenging times. I had no hope. I had no plans for college. I really was a very unhappy young person, and I ended up failing out of high school, and then I ended up failing out of the first 2 colleges I went to because I just couldn't focus in a classroom. And so by 19, I found myself living in Phoenix. I just failed out of my second college. I couldn't afford meat. I was sleeping on the floor. I had literally no hope in life, no ambition, and I ended up joining the Air Force, and that's when things started turning around for me.
Okay, so you were in the Air Force, I assume, enlisted, I assume, because you didn't go to college. Is that correct? So, okay.
Yeah, I enlisted at age 21.
Okay, and how was the Air Force experience for you?
The Air Force was amazing. It was challenging in the sense that it was the first time in a long time I'd had discipline and structure in my life. Back then, basic training was 6 weeks, so it was really, it wasn't super hard. And the real advantage I had was my life was so rough that everything the Air Force threw at me was not as challenging as it would have been for a typical 18-year-old with a loving and normal family upbringing. I'd already been surviving on my own for 3 years in some of the worst conditions you can imagine. So it was, I was a lot more grateful and appreciative of being able to eat every day, or, having friends, or having like a job.
Right, and obviously hardship was not a stranger to you either, which helps because I know people joke about the Air Force being the easier of the branches, but there's still a boot camp to get through, and there's still things you've got to do, and it's a tough life if you come out of a fairly sheltered environment. So you, having had the experience previously, would have been probably undeterred, having probably slept in even worse conditions than that.
Oh, absolutely. Even basic training was like an upgrade from where I was
Right.
living. I mean, I was starving, and And it was just interesting because everybody has a different experience coming to basic training, because it's like going to jail, Steve. You've
Yeah.
been awake for 24 hours. You're being bussed into a giant facility topped with barbed wire, manned by guards with machine guns at 4 in the morning. It is very unnerving for anyone.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've known people that have been through the training. Now, my nephew's currently in the Air Force. He's stationed in Germany he says he's stationed in Germany at what he was originally a German military base in East Germany, built in World War II, and then later operated by the Soviets, but East German government. But he did fine because he actually is a bodybuilder and a rugby player, so he was in excellent physical condition. So he was fine with it, and he'd already completed university with electrical engineering degree. Went in and enlisted because he didn't want to manage things, he wanted to do things. I knew another gentleman who was a friend of one of my daughters who went to the Air Force. I actually helped tutor him to help him get better ASVAB scores so he could get the position he wanted. He told me that in the boot camp there were kids in there that were crying every night. They were just breaking down crying, and because they just couldn't deal with that. They lived such a nice life up to that point. They weren't used to people yelling at them and having to live in those kind of conditions. So
Yeah, it's. I had a lot of people crying in my basic training flight because it is constant stress, and for the average civilian to be exposed to being screamed at, being on the tightest schedule written down to the minute, and having these giant muscular savages screaming at you all day long, it's not the most pleasant environment, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to
yeah,
be stressful.
and zero, you're supposed to be learning, but zero tolerance for mistakes and no patience with you whatsoever, because they're trying to get you to the point that everything's automatic and you can make decisions in a heartbeat that are correct decisions. And that's the only way to do it. The human animal grows and develops and improves through stress, through major stress and challenge. That's the way we're designed. Someone told me once that when I was in Temecula, I grew a bunch of different things. I had a little urban farm going on there, lots of produce and stuff. And I had grapes. I had one year I had these fantastic grapes, and the next year I got like nothing. And somebody told me, said, look, here's what you got to understand about grapes. They need to struggle. They need to almost die for lack of water, and then you water them and flood them, and then you'd let them almost die again. And then you have to prune them back to basically nothing. You just strip everything off to a bare stick every single season and let them have to grow back again. And he was kind of talking me through these things. And he said the grapes are like human beings. They really have to struggle to survive, and then they show up plump, sweet, and perfect if given that chance. But if you pamper them and try to take care of them like you would roses, you're going to get little, small, very little productivity, sour, worthless little grapes that even the birds won't want. So, yeah. So that was explained to me, and I thought that is so appropriate to how humans are, that we need the challenge. So even though you had that tough background, that obviously led you to where you are now, kind of gave you some of the resilience that you needed, the self-determination, the perseverance to get to where you are now. And now you're passing it on to the people. Now you says you have 8 books that are written. What do those books entail?
Yeah, so I am really big on autodidactic learning, like being self-taught, and it's how I started a magazine, and I learned the process of self-publishing. So I've started writing books on charter schools, education, tech jobs. My last book I wrote was on speed learning, actually, and it's about time for me to write another book. But I developed 16 speed learning techniques, just stuff that I had used and developed over the years to help me to teach myself how to do things faster, and wrote a book on it, and I was very proud of it. It's still one of my favorite books I've ever written, because it's really good for anyone like me that either has dyslexia or ADHD or ADD, alternative methodologies of learning according to your learning style. And it's definitely, it got some good sales. I was really proud of it.
So are you an heavy advocate of applied learning or heavily kinesthetic learning, hands-on doing things as opposed to reading and learning, or is there a place for all of that?
So my PhD dissertation was on project-based learning in the instruction of electrical engineering for adults. And what I learned is that project-based learning is good for kids or students that don't function well in a traditional classroom. It helps them understand math projects a little better when they can work in groups and have real life examples of how to do things versus just plain textbook instructions, rote memorization, things like that. It's not good across the board for everybody though. And that was the biggest takeaway that I had as I was going through my process.
So different things for different people. Now, unfortunately, our school system tends to believe everything's a one size fits all. And I like you, when I went through school, I think if they'd have had the tests for disabilities, I probably would have qualified for several of them. I know I have always had a lot of, I don't know if it's ADD because I can't diagnose those things, but a lot of energy in me, always got to be bumping the legs, always got to be moving things, and my teacher would send home notes that I wouldn't sit still, that I was squirmy, that I made funny noises in class. I just couldn't sit there for hour after hour after hour sitting in a seat, and just everything in my body, every cell was trying to do something active. And I think I was fortunate, although they didn't understand any of that back then, they weren't drugging me because they didn't know enough to even do that. I think that's a mistake too. We're going to take a break. When we get back, I want to pick up on this idea of applied learning and project-based learning, because I do a lot of it now teaching in a college setting, and I find that it's very, very effective for the topics that I teach. That doesn't mean they're effective for others, but for what I teach, it is. And I want to get into that and get your thoughts on that as well. This is Building Solid Foundations. We are talking to Dr. Rob Garcia, and he is talking to us today about how to become business celebrities and have that warrior strategist inside of you. I'm your host, Steve Matley. I'm Building Solid Foundations. We'll be right back after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Most mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAAradio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about. So join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio.
Hi, this is Jim McLaughlin with Effective Action Consulting, and I've been a member of Fire Up Connect for probably 3 years now. And what I really like about Fire Up Connect is the unique model that we go through, that we follow, the agenda, so to speak, in the meeting that really has us get engaged and involved with each other in the meetings. It's not that we're individuals, it's that we're all really working together to better ourselves, our businesses, and the community through the projects that we work on. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to network with people in this environment, and it's really impacted my business in a big way. So take a look.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we are talking to Dr. Rob Garcia. We've been talking about different learning styles, and when we left off, we were talking about kind of the applied or project-based learning, and that is interesting to me. Rob, when I first got into higher education, now, like you, my high school guidance counselor would be shocked, appalled, and completely mystified to learn that I actually work in higher education. I'm sure yours would be shocked to find out you have a PhD, but and that's because sometimes it's you don't know that kid that's struggling in high school. You don't know where they're going to end up. And my guidance counselor kind of told me that I was probably not a college-bound kind of kid. You know, nobody was really looking for me out there. So I did end up getting an MBA eventually, and I work in a college. I run construction management degree programs, which is very applied. That's the background I came from. So I'm an accidental educator. I'm not an academic. I'm just a person who does construction and development that ended up in education. And I've been doing it now for actually the better part of 2 decades now, in addition to still running my business in the world doing my thing. And as I've evolved as kind of an instructor and kind of directing the program, I've moved away from the traditional quizzes and exams. I still do some because the students will have to take some of those for certain certifications later on, the multiple guest type stuff. But I have moved away from that in most of my classes because I found that they were very poor ways of assessing things. They were very poor ways of learning things because you're memorizing things and then regurgitating it for a test, and you've got a 25% chance of getting it right, and there's one of the possible answers is sitting there in front of you. And I found, what's a lot more important is, can you figure out not how to pick the right one of the 2 to 4 options to answer a question, but can you figure out which is the right question to ask, and then figure out what the right answer might be to that question. So I do project-based classes. I can find out what my students have learned and how well they can apply things by giving them projects that simulate real-world projects where they have to dig in and go through contract documents and do estimates and do schedules and put a team together and identify safety and risk matrix issues and logistics issues. And they have to lay all this out. And I find that it's a much more effective way for me and for anybody I bring in. I bring industry people in to help judge these things to determine, are we meeting the outcomes that we hope to meet in this course, or are we just passing people through because they managed to pass a test? So I want to get your thoughts on that, since that seems to be the gist of your PhD.
So first of all, you're in the right direction for sure. You're doing it completely correct. I have a client right now who teaches critical skills to students and problem solving. It is the #1 requested skill by employers, but surveys are showing that only 52% of new hires and new applicants are actually qualified at critical thought. And critical thought, it ties in with what you're talking about, because bringing in industry level experts to work with your students is the perfect way to do it, because we tailor our instruction to industry, or we should anyway, because that's the realest, most genuine and accurate indicator of what students need to learn so that they are ready for the real world. They need to know what it's like on a job site, how to do estimates, and by bringing in these industry leaders and these CEOs and these bosses in the construction field, you're going to have a more accurate simulation of what the real job is like. And that's why we do internships, right?
Right. Yeah, and I look also at open-ended questions. If I have to give some kind of a quiz or assessment, it's not multiple guess a lot. It's open-ended things. Here's the thing: it takes a lot more work as the instructor to grade that stuff. See, I can put the work into setting up a multiple choice test, and then the computer will automatically distribute that. It'll randomize questions and answers, and then it'll grade it for me and drop it into the grade book, which is great. But it's a very poor assessment, and so I'm willing to take on the additional work to have to read through, because the computer can't read through individual students' answers and view them the way a human being would and say, is that right? Is that in the right context? Is the terminology correct? Does it make sense? Another thing I learned was mathematics. I struggled in math as well, and my challenge with that was my dad was a math professor. He was one of those people that assumed that math was just intuitive to everybody, because it was to him. It was obvious. And the mantra of the math instructor in my world always was, you go down this list, and somewhere in one of the steps, it always started with, and as we all know. And there's, no, we don't know, or I wouldn't be sitting here. But they just assume that everybody knows this because that's natural to them. They're mathematical type thinkers. And also, always one of the steps, I think, was a miracle occurs. Because I could never figure out how they got from step 6 to step 7. It just changed. And I never got it figured out. I just really struggled at that. When I was teaching, the first opportunity to teach, I was teaching estimating class at a junior college, at a 2-year college. The thing there is I had a lot of students that were adult learners who had never intended to go to college. These were people that came out of high school, went into the trades, went into the field, and now they just wanted to get out of the trench and into the office, right? Because at some point in your mid-30s, your body says, could we not do this a lot longer, right? So I had to teach the estimating mathematics, which is algebra, geometry, and trigonometry is what it is. And all these are all people that had done very poorly at that. And I figured out a way to teach it instead of using algebraic formulas because that scared them. When they'd see letters and numbers mixed together, and if they saw any Greek letters in there, it just freaked them out. It just scared the heck out of them. To them, it just looked like somebody dropped a box of alphabet cereal on the table. They were supposed to put it into some kind of order. So I came up with constants where you kind of do the hard math up front and you just give them constants. So for radiuses, for perimeters, for diameters, you give them a constant instead of a pi formula, right? You give them a constant instead of a squared, b squared, c squared, that kind of stuff, right? It made it so much easier. And then when I'd explain to them, okay, it's not A, B, and C, it is a joist, a stud, and a rafter. That's your triangle. They, boom, lights on, they totally got it. They'd all done that before, and everybody knew how to do it. And so they're, oh, that's all it is. That was a piece of cake. So I learned that by being able to apply things, and in school, that's actually looked down on as a lower level of education. I've learned that the applied is considered lower level, and the theoretical is considered a much higher level. And so they kind of look down on that, and which I didn't understand.
Here's something that's fascinating, Steve. My first job, one of my first jobs out of the Air Force when I moved to San Diego, believe it or not, I got hired as a high school engineering teacher. I never passed pre-algebra. So you and I are both in alignment, right? I was terrified, but once in high school when I got to business math, I was getting A's, like, because I understood it was situational based. And so they bring me in this classroom in this low-income school, Morse High School in Southeast San Diego. It's a little rough.
I know Morse. I used to officiate high school football in this county, so I know Morse. I've been there.
Yeah. So they bring me in. I don't know anything about teaching at all. They just thought I was smart because I was Air Force. I'll run with that. So by the end of the 5th year, I was nominated for Teacher of the Year, and I was running an Academy of Engineering with like 5 teachers under me. And I figured it out. We were building robots, and we were entering competitions, and we were doing all this stuff. So a lot of what I taught when we got into mathematical stuff was based on real-life applications, or I had them build a robot or do something fun, like create a mousetrap car or something. And that way, when people can imagine actual applications for math, it becomes a lot easier and it actually becomes fun, and especially if there's competition. That's
absolutely
right. Yeah.
And I learned, so I took algebra and geometry and those things in school. I learned it through my metal shop, my auto shop, my wood shop classes, because I had to make calculations to figure out what size rod goes onto the welder. I had to do calculations down to the 1,000th of an inch on the lathe. I had to do, working in auto shop, you have to figure things at timing and those. That's back when they had carburetors and spark plugs and stuff, right? So there was a lot of math involved, and I think one of the biggest tragedies in education is when they got rid of shop programs and trade programs. I found it ironic. I was at one of the colleges, and they were kind of teaching us one of the great studies about visual versus audio versus kinesthetic, right? And kinesthetic learning is the most effective way to teach. And I'm thinking, but these are the same academics that the first thing they cancel is the shop classes, the marching band, the performing arts, the fine arts. Those are all the kinesthetic programs. The athletics, that's the kinesthetic programs. And they're not throwaway programs, and that's how you learn a lot of things. I found that highly ironic that they themselves did not see that. The people that wrote the report didn't seem to even understand that if you want to do that, go talk to the athletic department.
Yeah, for people that are high energy like you and not doing well academically, and I was the same way. You have to have some type of learning by doing, a kinesthetic application, tactile instruction where you're touching stuff, you're making projects, whatever. I was a skateboarder through high school, and that was my outlet. And skateboarding taught me the metric system, because wheels are in millimeters.
That's
We're
right.
talking about angles of concave for the decks, like all this different stuff. There's a lot more math and physics involved in skateboarding than people think.
Yes.
And I brought a lot of those lessons to my classroom, and I gave a lot of instructions. We watched some videos, and it made it a lot more fun. You're really hitting on something important, Steve. The importance of creativity in the classroom and taking the boring parts and making them chewable and interesting.
Yes, yes. Interesting about the skateboarding. When I was in ninth grade, I took my first drafting class. And back then, they used pencils. They use computers now. But pencils, and you had a little lead sharpener. You had to sharpen the leads. And so you'd have all these graphite shavings. We would save those, put those in our sandwich bags that we saved from lunch, and we used that to lubricate our skateboard bearings. We'd punch a little hole in it and use that because it was a dry lubricant. It worked really well. It worked better than the WD-40 or something like that would get full of junk and gook. So it was an interesting use of that. That's where I kind of applied how to figure out different ways to do things, recycling and things. We're going to take another short break. When we come back, what I want to talk about, Rob, is how you help people today. Your books and your programs and what you're doing to help people to overcome some of their obstacles and how to really become celebrities in their business world. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We'll be right back after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We're on KCAA 1050 AM.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections. Hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, EDUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental property, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about. So join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio.
Real men of real estate.
Men of Real Estate Radio show here on KCAA.
Most mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAAradio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Hi, this is Jim McLaughlin with Effective Action Consulting, and I've been a member of Fire Up Connect for probably 3 years now. And what I really like about Fire Up Connect is the unique model that we go through, that we follow, the agenda, so to speak, in the meeting that really has us get engaged and involved with each other in the meetings. It's not that we're individuals, it's that we're all really working together to better ourselves, our businesses, and the community through the projects that we work on. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to network with people in this environment, and it's really impacted my business in a big way. So take a look.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are talking to Dr. Rob Garcia. We've been talking about different learning styles and applied learning and project-based learning as opposed to traditional read and regurgitate type learning. And there's a place for all types of different learning. I'm also an avid reader. I will say that. I'm an avid reader and very much self-educated on a lot of things. So I do embrace that as well. but I think that the applied is very important. So, Dr. Rob, I want to talk to you now about how you help people. You have a business, you have books out, you have programs that are set up, you've done interviews and talks to help people. So, what's your approach in helping people to overcome whatever's limiting them or whatever is in their way to become more successful in their business, to become known in their business?
So basically, we all, as business owners and entrepreneurs, come under the auspice that being an expert is the end-all be-all, and it's not. I had a very, very stunning revelation a few years ago where I realized being an expert just means you have a skill, but it also means you're in competition with every other talented expert out there, and you're pricing to the bottom, you're taking out ads, you're doing all this stuff, you're trying to be relevant and visible, it's just not working. And I realized that being popular is the secret to getting business fame and infamy. And so I started to think, okay, what do popular people do? How are they seen? How do celebrities act? And all of this, I started to realize the difference between an expert versus a celebrity. And the ultimate fusing is the celebrity expert. It's the Caesar Milans. It's the Judge Judy. It's the Dr. Phils. You know, they take a profession and a niche and industry, and they take it to that nth degree. How? Through media, through visibility, through being a celebrity, through social media, all this different stuff. And so I started to work with a lot of experts, and I looked at what they're doing, and I said, okay, let's take what you got going on here. You got a nice little solopreneur business or whatever. You own a garage in Texas, or you're doing people's taxes or whatever. How are you standing out from all the other people in your niche that have more money than you, that possibly might be in giant firms that are bankrolling them and have a marketing team? How are you going to stand out and be better than them and charge more than them and be relevant and consistent? And that's how I created my program, Tactical CEQ. And I realized there are 4 things that any business owner needs to do: strategic social media, media interviews, teach your industry, and celebrity and influencer recruiting or partnerships. You apply those 4 things to any business, and you're going to start getting a lot more views.
Okay, so repeat those again for us?
Absolutely. Strategic social media, media interviews, teach your industry, and celebrity and influencer partnerships.
Okay. And how do people approach? Because most people look at that and they say, okay, well, social media, I do social media. How to make it strategic, I'd have to think through, but I have that pretty much done. Interviews, I don't know anybody that want to talk to me. Teach my industry, I don't know anybody that want to hire me to teach them anything. And then, so they go through the list and thinking, how do I even access or start this? You already have to be a celebrity to even do this.
That's what people assume.
That's
but
right.
What I teach them is I just teach them 1 or 2 techniques in each of those areas. And I'm going to give your listeners a really good, what I call a gold bar in each of those areas, like client level tactics. So for social media, post eye-catching, engaging things that have a purpose. It's better to put all your effort, all your energy into 2 good posts a day versus 10 of them that are poorly constructed and just don't go anywhere.
So pictures of my cat nobody cares about?
Well, if you want to have a discussion, that's fine. If that's your end result.
If I own a pet store, maybe that's great. Or if I'm a veterinarian, yes.
Yeah, I post pop media stuff about the Avengers or Iron Man or whatever when I want to have discussions with people. It's an icebreaker, and it has a place for it for sure.
Okay.
For media interviews, figure out your angle. What makes you interesting? Why are you interviewable? Are you going to teach something? Do you have a crazy life experience like I did? Are you going to do a demonstration? Once you figure out your angle, rinse, repeat, and then you can start just racking up interviews. And I was listening to the number of interviews I had when you were reading it earlier. That's I think I'm at 220 now. I'm 3 pages.
Are you? Okay.
Oh yeah, it's been wild. So figuring out your media angle is the most important thing if you want more interviews. You have to figure out why you're interesting and look at it from a producer or a podcaster's standpoint. Would you be interesting in?
Okay, and that's, I think, key to anything you're doing in business. If you have to put yourself in the consumer's place, whether it's the buyer or the audience or whatever that consumer is, the person on the receiving end of that, you have to take yourself out of what I think is great, what I think is interesting, and put in what do the people that I'm trying to reach? What do they think is interesting? What do they think is important? That I think that's a key to all of business.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You cannot walk in there self-serving. You cannot walk in there trying to get something for free. You want to absolutely pitch value to audience and make sure that you have a gift or something where an audience will have a great takeaway.
Right. Okay, so then we got to teach your industry, right?
Yeah. So this is where it really stands out, because if you think about most experts, what do? They put a bunch of money into Facebook ads, or they hire a digital marketer or whatever. If you teach your industry through Facebook Lives and really well-crafted posts with strong graphics, you're going to get passive clients, which means you don't have to put any work in. They will find you. I did a Facebook Live yesterday. I was talking about press releases. A guy I have never talked to in my life reached out and hired me over the phone immediately. And it was just because I was teaching my industry. And it's so easy to do, Steve. And there are 3 levels you can teach at. You can teach at the industry level, you can teach at the general level, or you can teach at the specific level, which is tactics and how-tos. And if you're ever, for people that aren't super creative or like kind of have writer's block or not sure where to get started, start with those 3 categories and just start thinking, okay, what's my industry? What techniques do I know that are unique to me that people pay me to do for them that I could teach? Or what subject under my industry umbrella could I teach people that's interesting? And you will never run out of content as long as you use those 3 areas for teach your industry.
Okay. And then your 4th area was partnerships. Is that right?
Yeah. So learn to write an attractive offer, get people on the phone that are in the celebrity and influencer sphere. So I started a magazine and I reach out. I've interviewed Steve Sims, Dr. Dale Comstock of Delta Force, a guy from SEAL Team 6, Scott Oldford, and I got a 20-minute one-on-one with Sean Kanan, who's in Cobra Kai Season 5. That blew my mind. It's not as hard as people think to get celebrities and influencers on the phone. And what you want to do is just talk to them, find out what they're working on and what their biggest problem is that you can help them. So when I get on, I offer an interview and I just talk to them for 15 minutes and I just pick their brain, find out what's going on. I don't try and sell them a single thing, and I try and create value and offer value. I became not partners, but I had a very good friendship with Mike Michalowicz, who's a New York Times bestselling author. I've interviewed him twice for my magazine, and I've gotten some stellar business guidance from him. And so this is how we attract these influencers and celebrities. Just reach out to them over Twitter, ask them for a video call.
Great. Okay. So that's the 4 steps. That's strategic social media. You want to have an angle for interviews. You want to be able to teach your industry something interesting that they think is interesting, and have strategic partnerships with industry leaders. So is that in one of your books, Dr. Rob? Is that in one of your books, if people want more information on that?
No, but I do teach it in a couple of different level courses. I have a DIY version of Tax CEQ, and I have a work version.
Great.
People just have to message me if they want to know about it.
Okay. And so what's your contact information? Do you have a website or email? What do you have?
You can find me on Facebook under Rob the Warrior Strategist.
Rob the Warrior Strategist, okay.
Yeah, and then, or my magazine, shiftlifedesign.com.
Shiftlifedesign.com?
Yeah, and it's free to read. You can go to the website and contact me or pick up an issue and read every issue that's come out last year.
Great. Okay, so listeners, if they're interested, they can contact you and find out more about what you have, what you offer, and what your programs are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's probably more to it than all this, but you also, I know, help people get articles published. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a service where I write business articles for people, or I help them to create content on a much larger level. And so a recent article I did went viral for a client, Ted Fox. So this Marine that has a garage fixing classic cars, he reached out to me because he was just having some trouble getting visibility. And we wrote some articles. We did a press release. Ted got 3,000 views on his article, on a single article, 89,000 online impressions He's gotten 9 phone calls from out of state from people wanting to hire him for consulting for their cars, and the radio reached out personally to invite him for an interview. Actually today, it's been crazy. There's a lot of value in writing business articles.
Fantastic. Yeah, and there's people think that when you write an article, you're going to put it on your website and it's probably going to die. But there are ways to get it out where people actually are going to see it. And social media is not the only avenue. Print media is still out there with big name publications.
Oh, absolutely. And there are a lot of ways to recycle content or to keep an article circulating forever. I mean, the thing I did, once Ted started getting numbers on this article and I realized it had real teeth, like people loved it, I started just putting it everywhere. I sent it out to my email list. I added different hashtags. I pushed it out to Twitter, to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Instagram, to Pinterest. Like, I went nuts. I popped it on Reddit and it started getting crazy views too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different avenues out there. And it's very hard for one person to try and manage all that. Say social media, well, it used to be there was just social media with 1 or 2 sites, 1 or 2 platforms. And now there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Everyone needs an automation system for sure, so that they can preload their social media stuff. I use one called Hello Woofy, and it's very, very effective. I got a deal on it. It was like $50 for an entire year. It's a newer company, but it's very robust software, super easy to learn.
So we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to finish up our conversation with Dr. Rob Garcia, talking about how to become a business celebrity. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We'll be right back after this.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, EDUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental property, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about. So join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio.
Real men of real estate.
Men of Real Estate Radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Hi, this is Jim McLaughlin with Effective Action Consulting, and I've been a member of Fire Up Connect for probably 3 years now. And what I really like about Fire Up Connect is the unique model that we go through, that we follow, the agenda, so to speak, in the meeting that really has us get engaged and involved with each other in the meetings. It's not that we're individuals, it's that we're all really working together to better ourselves, our businesses, and the community through the projects that we work on. So I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to network with people in this environment, and it's really impacted my business in a big way. So take a look.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We are talking to Dr. Rob Garcia. He is a warrior strategist talking to us about becoming a business celebrity. And we talked about his 4 keys to improving your business and getting visible. And Rob, there's And we talked before the break. We kind of talked a little bit about how people don't know they can do this; they're not sure they can do it. Talk us through a little bit of what the thinking process is for the small business, the solopreneur, who's thinking that sounds good, but I don't know that I can do that.
Right. So the first thing that people need to understand is they need to do the self-work to overcome their ego, because it's ego and imposter syndrome that keep us from achieving our greatest visibility results in business. Our business only performs as well as we do, and to the lengths that we can imagine.
Now, are ego and imposter syndrome kind of opposite manifestations of the same fear? Because I think of ego and I think of kind of arrogance and conceit, and I think of imposter syndrome as a feeling of inadequacy.
They're both intricately linked in this process. So ego is, if your self-esteem is very low and you don't think you're important, you don't think anyone cares about what you're doing, that's low ego.
Okay.
When you get too much ego, that's when you start getting arrogant. You start thinking you're better than everybody, and you start thinking you're smarter than everybody, and you're insufferable to be around.
But I find a lot of times that is a manifestation of somebody who really is suffering from the opposite problem. So they're trying to overcome that by putting on the costume of being super confident.
Oh, absolutely. And you never want to get that far. And I always tell people on the big scale, be a 7 out of 10. You want to be confident enough in yourself to where you can have other people be attracted to you in a business sense, but you don't want to be too humble either, because if you're too humble and you're too shy, you're not going to be a vibrant personality. And that's really, to be a business celebrity, you need to have energy, attractive energy. You need to be interesting to listen to, and you need to start working on some certain skill sets. The first one is being comfortable speaking on camera. And that's a big one for some people, because I didn't just jump into this and start doing interviews and know what I was talking about. I had to really work on camera presence, on speaking tonality, on the speed at which I speak, raising an emotion and lowering an emotion. It's very interesting.
Right.
So more people need to practice. Facebook Live is a great way to start.
Well, the best and the most painful way to do that, and the most effective, is to speak on camera and then watch yourself. Because a lot of times people will speak on camera and they're nervous, but they really don't want to watch themselves. And when they do, they just want to run and hide and never talk to anybody again, because they're just horrified of what they see. Well, even in Toastmasters, if they videotape the Toastmaster presentation and then watch it, a lot of times people are horrified at their own little tics, nervous habits. They don't know the way they sound. They don't know the way their mannerisms look, because they never see that. And I've had this with students when I was teaching speaking classes. We would videotape, and they were just horrified. And I say, listen, you need to get past that, because, see, you're the only one that didn't know that's what you look like. We already knew, and we're still okay with you. So you're still here. You're still our friend, right? So get past that. You're the only one that's got a problem with it. So understand that's who you are, what you are, and if you don't like, improve it. And if it's part of who you are, embrace it. And let's just keep moving. Let's just get used to it.
Yeah, it really helps to watch some smooth TED Talks, some very professional, noted speakers, and the confidence. You look for body language, good openers, good intros, and that's just going to help you to be more comfortable speaking on film.
Right. Yeah. And just get used to yourself. This is how you sound. This is how you look. And it's not the way you thought it was. And it's okay, because everybody else already knew.
Yeah. And being a teacher, Steve, really pushed me into the spotlight. I mean, when you're giving instruction to 30 people, 5 different groups of 30 people every single day, you start to lose your shyness. You start to get confident. And then I started getting TV appearances. Right. And when you walk into the Fox studio and there's 5 big cameras and a bunch of lights and you're going live in front of thousands of people, you start to realize you kind of turned a corner and gotten to a level. And it's kind of hard.
Yeah, and I've learned that confidence is great. There has to be a measure of humility that comes under it, so you don't trigger into arrogance. But true humility is not a self-depreciating insecurity. True humility is knowing yourself well enough and being confident enough that you don't have to prove anything to anybody, but at the same time, you're not better than anybody else. It's understanding nobody's better than you, but you're not better than anybody else, but we all have something to offer. And so there's a high level of confidence with that, but there's also a high measure of humility with that, and those things work together, I think, very effectively. Too much, as you said, insecurity is not really humility. It looks like it being humble, but it's really not. And it's really I think, born out of a little self-absorption. We're concerned about what other people think of us. As Zig Ziglar said, it's not being self-conscious. You're actually, you're other people conscious. You're worried about what everybody else thinks of you. Empathy, yeah. So you can't control that anyways. And again, like I say, you just got to be comfortable with who you are and the way you are. And at this point, I looked at, when I first saw myself on video, I was a little bit appalled as well. And then I realized, but there's all these people in my life that are still hanging around, even though I'm like this. It must be okay. So, that's just the way it is. And your voice never sounds on camera or on recording the way you think it sounds.
No, it doesn't. It's a big shock to some people.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, so there's a mindset we have to get into. So saying that we want to get that mindset is fine. How do we get in that mindset?
So the first thing to do is to realize there's a single sentence that is wildly effective. And it's what I teach clients immediately. And that sentence is, someone needs you to show up today. And if you think about that, and what it really means, when people start seeing your content and they start writing you and saying, hey, this is exactly what I needed today, or hey, I related to that story you told about your grandmother, or your video interview changed my life, then you start to realize the impact. So go into the mindset that what you're doing helps people, and that there are people out there in pain, and if you show up, you will take away their pain. And you'll never, ever struggle with low self-confidence or ego or arrogance or any of this stuff, as long as you're coming from a genuine desire to help people.
Right. And also, don't get too hung up on view numbers and likes and comments and those kind of things initially, because it takes time to build up a following and people that will watch you. And sometimes the thing you did 3 years ago all of a sudden gets passed around later on, and all of a sudden people are watching it, but initially it looks like nobody cared. But again, if it hits one person, they're going to go share it with other people because it meant something to them. And that may not happen the day you post it up.
Yeah.
So don't get too hung up on those numbers. We're going to have to sign off. Dr. Rob, I want to thank you for being on the show. If you want to contact him or find out what he does, Facebook, it's Rob the Warrior Strategist, Rob the Warrior Strategist on Facebook, or to shiftlifedesign.com, shiftlifedesign.com. Find out about Dr. Rob Garcia, the books he's written, the programs he has, and how he can help you to improve your business, improve your presence, improve your visibility, and overall improve your lifestyle, because all that comes together. Dr. Rob, thank you for being on Building Solid Foundations.
Thank you, Steve.
So we'll be back next week. This is your host, Steve Matley. Until next week, go do something different this week.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.